All right, let's dive deep into Scream 2. I'm betting you're ready to go way beyond the surface with this one. We're going to uncover what truly makes this horror classic tick. We'll cover the plot, of course, the characters, those deeper themes, and even those oh-so-clever techniques that make this sequel truly stand out.
Yeah, you've got a good reason to be intrigued by Scream 2. It's
Yeah.
not just another typical slasher film.
Yeah.
It really dissects the horror genre. And cleverly, I might add, but still manages to deliver those chills.
Exactly. So we've got Sydney Prescott back. It's been 2 years since she survived the first film, and now she's in college trying to move on with her life, but
College, huh?
yeah. Pretty perfect setting for a slasher sequel, right?
You got it.
The filmmakers really tapped into those universal anxieties you feel when you're starting fresh, like in a new environment where you might be a bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, and by shifting the setting to Windsor College, Scream 2 sets itself apart right away. It's like they created a whole new playing field for Ghostface. Sprawling grounds, late-night parties,
A sense of anonymity, for sure.
Exactly. All of which just crank up the vulnerability of the characters.
It's not just a change of scenery either. It's like a whole new set of anxieties and just possibilities for some serious terror. Oh, and here's where it gets really meta. There's a movie within the movie called Stab, which is based on, you guessed it,
The first Scream,
Inga.
they didn't throw Stab in there for kicks either. It's a really smart commentary on sequels, and I think what we expect as an audience.
Yeah.
It's like the filmmakers are holding a mirror up to the whole horror genre, kind of winking at the tropes and conventions, but then at the same time,
They subvert them.
yeah,
Let's talk about Sydney Prescott. She's not your run-of-the-mill damsel in distress.
not even close. Sydney's definitely back, but she's not that same terrified teenager from the first film. She's tougher now. She's more cautious, but yeah. And she's carrying the weight of all that past trauma. It makes her so much more compelling as a character and honestly much more relatable too.
Totally agree. She's definitely a fighter, and she's learned a lot about survival, that's for sure. But she's still human, She's still dealing with the psychological scars from everything that's happened.
Yeah, you really feel for her.
For sure. Her struggle to, truly escape her past, I think that's something that resonates with a lot of people, even if they haven't gone through something as traumatic as that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the film's ability to explore those universal themes, but within this horror story. We also see the return of Dewey and Gale.
Yes.
Their characters have evolved too.
Oh, yeah. Dewey, well, bless his heart. He's still as protective as ever, but now he's walking with a limb, remember?
Yeah. From that encounter with Ghostface in the first film,
Ow.
it's like a visual reminder of what violence can do, how it leaves these lasting consequences, both physical and psychological. Dewey's limp makes him seem a bit more vulnerable, too.
Right.
Reminding us that even the characters who seem so strong are actually affected by trauma.
So true. And Gail Weathers, our ambitious reporter, is back, and she's still chasing the story, but this time she's also wrestling with the ethics of her work, especially because, well...
Because she profited from the whole Woodsboro murders.
Right. With that book she wrote.
Yeah, Gail's character arc really makes you think about how media can sensationalize violence and that potential for exploitation, too.
She's just so fascinating because she's ambitious, but she's also morally conflicted.
Definitely.
Okay, let's talk about Randy Meeks, the horror movie fanatic. Gotta love Randy. He's the one who lays out all the rules for horror sequel.
Oh, he's like the voice of the audience. He puts into words all the tropes and expectations we bring when we watch a horror sequel.
And here's the thing, Scream 2 uses Randy to kind of play with those expectations, They set us up for some seriously surprising twists.
Absolutely.
He's like a walking, talking horror encyclopedia.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to use it.
He's not. And you know what? His analysis is pretty spot on, even though the film ends up breaking some of those very rules that he carefully outlines.
Yeah, and as shocking as it is, Randy's death drives home the point that no one is truly safe in a horror movie, not even the expert.
Right.
It also highlights how unpredictable the killer's motives and actions really are. Keeps everyone on edge,
Keeps the audience guessing. It's brutal. But it's a reminder that in Scream 2, everything is heightened. The stakes are higher, the danger feels more real, and that line between fiction and reality, well...
It gets blurry.
Very blurry.
Yeah. And talk about blurred lines, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into the killers in Scream 2.
Okay, yeah.
We too this time.
A double dose of terror.
Yeah, Mickey, the film student,
Obsessed with media attention.
Totally. And then there's Mrs. Loomis.
Billy's mom.
Hell!
Let's talk about vengeful.
Oh, yeah. It's like this double whammy of motives, right?
Right.
You've got Mickey who, like, embodies this dark side of fame, that desire for notoriety. And it seems like no matter the cost, he wants to be a household name, and he'll kill to get there.
It's chilling, really. A commentary on how obsessed we are with media attention.
And how far some people will go to get it.
Exactly. Then you have Mrs. Loomis, and she's driven by, well, a much more primal urge, revenge.
Yeah, she lost her son, and in her mind, Sydney's to blame.
For everything.
All of it. And her grief is just twisted into this all-consuming rage.
She's gonna make Sydney pay.
Oh, yeah.
Her storyline adds this really personal element to the killings, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, it shows how grief can just warp into something dark, something destructive.
And, it's a play on that whole sequel thing, right? Like, bringing back elements from the past.
Yeah.
But Scream 2 does it in a way that feels organic. It's not just a rehash.
It's part of the story.
It is, yeah. You're right. It's not just about revisiting familiar faces. Mrs. Loomis represents how the past can linger, how even when you think you've gotten away, it can come back to haunt you.
And that's exactly what Sydney's up against throughout the film. She's trying to heal, move on. But something always pulls her back.
The past just has a hold of her.
Think about that scene in the soundproof studio.
Oh, intense.
So intense. She sees Dewey getting attacked,
But she can't hear him.
because of the soundproofing,
Oh, man. The suspense.
it's agonizing.
It's a masterclass in suspense. They used the lack of sound, the sound, to create something truly terrifying.
It's like our primal fears.
Yeah, like isolation, helplessness,
Being trapped.
knowing that something horrible is happening, but there's nothing you can do to stop it.
It's brilliant filmmaking,
Oh, for sure.
but it's disturbing too. And I think that's what makes Scream 2 so effective. It's not just about jump scares. It gets under your skin. The psychological torment, the constant dread that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, the film creates this atmosphere, like this dread that just hangs over every scene. You're on edge the whole time, even when there's no ghost face mask in sight.
And it all circles back to the idea of the sequel, doesn't it? Everything's dialed up, more deaths, they're more gruesome, the stakes are higher.
Yeah, and they don't just use those sequel tropes. They, like, dissect them, analyze them, and then...
Subvert them.
Yeah, it's like they're talking to the audience directly. Like, we know what you expect, but guess what? We're going somewhere else.
Totally. And it's not all scares either. Scream 2 weaves in some pretty thought-provoking stuff,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like our relationship with the media,
The nature of violence.
the impact of trauma.
That's one of the things that makes Scream 2 more than just a slasher film. It understands character. It gets the weight of trauma. And it's not afraid to dive into the complexities of what drives people.
It's a horror film that actually has something to say.
It does.
And you mentioned Marco Beltrami's score earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I have to agree, the music is so effective at building tension.
Yeah. It creates this unsettling atmosphere. It's like a heartbeat, and it just keeps getting faster and faster.
As the danger escalates.
Exactly. It's a huge part of why the film has such an impact.
It highlights those emotional moments.
Underscores the suspense.
And it stays with you even after the movie's over.
It does.
It shows you the power music has to elevate a story, to create an experience that really draws you in. So we've talked about Scream 2 being this awesome sequel, but what about its legacy? How has it influenced the horror genre and how we see sequels in general?
Well, I think it proved that sequels can be just as good as the originals.
Or even better.
Or even better. It showed that you can build on what worked in the first film, but still deliver something new and exciting. It didn't just recycle the same scares or rely on nostalgia. It took risks. It pushed boundaries.
And it elevated the whole franchise.
Yeah, I think it also did something else that was really important.
Okay, what's that?
It raised the bar for horror sequels. It showed they could be more than just mindless gore. They could be clever, thought-provoking, even funny.
Scream 2 gave filmmakers permission to have fun with the format, subvert expectations, and really push the boundaries of the genre.
And you can definitely see its influence on so many horror films that came after.
Oh, totally.
Like The Cabin in the Woods, with that self-aware humor.
Freaky.
Happy Death Day. All those meta-commentaries on horror tropes, they all owe something to Scream 2.
It's a game changer.
It is. It really is. It revitalized the slasher genre, showed that sequels could be smart and entertaining.
And left a mark on horror cinema.
A big one.
Speaking of marks, let's go back to that opening scene at the premiere of Stab.
Oh, yeah.
A character gets killed in a crowded movie theater.
And everyone thinks it's part of the movie.
That was bold.
It was brilliant because it makes us confront how desensitized we are to violence in media.
Yeah.
It makes a statement about how we consume horror, how easy it is to disconnect from what it would mean in real life.
Like it's asking, are we just entertained by violence, or is there something more to it? And honestly, that's a question we're still asking today. I mean, think about it. We're all about true crime documentaries now, podcasts, all these stories about real-life horrors.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's like, where's the line?
Yeah.
When does being fascinated by something turn into,
Desensitization.
desensitization? Exactly.
Scream 2 really walks that line.
It
It doesn't shy away from those gray areas. It makes us think about our own morbid curiosity and how entertainment can blur the lines between what's real and what's not.
like it's holding a mirror up to our own culture.
It is.
And I mean, beyond all that, Scream 2 is just a really well-made movie.
Oh, yeah.
Wes Craven's direction, the cinematography, the editing, it all just works to create this incredibly tense, suspenseful experience.
Craven knew horror. You can see his expertise all over this film.
He knew how to tell a story visually, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
The framing, the lighting, the way the camera moves, it all builds that sense of dread, and it just hangs over the whole movie.
It does.
And the sound design. Ugh, chills.
Oh, tell me about it.
That soundproof studio scene still gets to me.
It's genius.
Using silence to make things even tenser. Pure genius.
It's masterful. Craven takes away the sound, and it actually heightens everything else.
Yeah.
It makes the violence even more impactful because you feel vulnerable, exposed, just like those characters.
So we've covered a lot here.
We have.
We've talked about the plot, obviously, the characters, the themes, how technically brilliant it is. But what do you think is the lasting impact of Scream 2? What will people remember about it, like, years from now?
I think Scream 2 will be remembered for being smart, witty.
And pushing boundaries.
Oh, yeah. It's a film that respects its audience, I think. It assumes we can handle those complex themes, those challenging ideas, but still want to be scared, you know?
It never talks down to the viewer.
Never.
That's so refreshing. And it showed that sequels can be just as good or better than the originals. Scream 2 inspired a whole generation of filmmakers to think differently, take risks, and take the sequel, which was kind of seen as just a cash grab, and turn it into an art form.
It's a classic. It holds up so well today, and it's one that we'll be talking about for years to come.
Yeah. It got people talking about the media, violence, that fascination we all have with horror, things that are still so relevant.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about.
Doesn't it?
Like how our relationship with the media has changed since Scream 2 came out.
Are we even more desensitized to violence now?
Could a film like Scream 2 even be made today?
That's the thing about great films. They make you ask these questions.
The kind that stick with you.
Long after the movie's over.
It entertained, it challenged, and it left you wanting more. That's the mark of a truly successful film.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Scream 2. Hopefully you found it insightful.
It may be a little terrifying.
Just a bit. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and maybe, just maybe, sleep with the lights on for a night or two.